2021 sticker on it.
So you guys were talking about what tasks you think you could complete with the manipulator, like lighting a match. Do you think you could peel a sticker?
Peeling a sticker would be very challenging because it's really a two-handed task. I mean, I could
take a sticker off something. I guess you could just like scrape it.
Part of it has to do with the tool you have, yeah.
Yeah, I think if you had a scraper, you could mangle it pretty good.
Yeah. We could mangle it without a scraper.
I've definitely taken a few stickers off. Never intentionally, but
I got to figure out what to do with the patch. Patch is cool too.
So to follow up on the speed that we were talking about before, is basically you said that it was Hercules limited as to how fast we can go.
correct.
So how fast could Argus go if it wasn't, being tied down by Hercules?
So Argus is hanging on the end of 7,000 meters of what we call 6/8 umbilical, and that's the diameter of the wire. And it's being wrapped on a winch in the hold of Nautilus right now. And that winch can go 60 meters a minute if it was flat out. But we usually limit that to about
30.
half of that at 30 meters a minute, or about 1 knot.
There's a lot of things that just, while they can run flat out, it's not great to run them flat out all the time.
The winch that's lifting Argus up is what we call a traction winch. So there's the wire actually wraps around some cables 4 or 5 times before it goes onto the storage drum. And that's what is taking all the weight of all that wire hanging in the water.
I think it's 5.
Is it 5?
Yeah.
So for example, right now there's varying between 7 and 7,500 and 9,500 pounds are
Of tension
hanging off the back of the ship's A-frame in the water. So when we're at depth, that's right around 10,000 pounds. That's a lot of weight to be dynamic, going through 5 wraps around there's some big wheels that are turning. They're probably, say those are 2 meter diameter, 1.5.
I mean, the spacing between them, I think each one's probably just over 1 meter.
Yeah. And it's got to come up out of the water, go through the overboarding sheave on the A-frame, across the deck, through the deck sheave, down through the deck, and onto the traction winch.
So there was just an earthquake off the coast of Haiti. It was like, I think it's 7.2 is what they're reporting. If we had an earthquake here, how would that affect our dive? It wouldn't do too much, I wouldn't think, unless like a tsunami happened.
Even then, you're not really going to have much of an impact. until you get coastal. Tsunamis travel often along the seafloor, and then they rise up when they get to the coast.
Okay.
Because that pressure wave is still there, but so if you want to read about tsunamis, there's a book called The Wave, I believe it is. And they look at it both from a scientific perspective and a pro surfer perspective. But really some interesting information out there, both about rogue waves, tsunamis, the tallest waves recorded.
Good book.
What's the name of it again? The
I
Wave?
think it's just The Wave.
Yeah, it's called The Wave.
It's a good book.
There's apparently other books titled The Wave as well that don't talk about waves.
I'd believe that, yeah.
Yeah, it's all over the friggin' place. Look at this. And shows up in the USBL nav as well. See these?
The book we're talking about is by Susan Casey.
I may have steered
Yes.
Tim wrong because I told him I didn't see it in this display. So he's looking for a problem between here and there, and that's not where the problem is.
I might just have to put this on my reading list.
It's a good read.
I second that.
So it's The Wave, In Pursuit of the Rogues, Freaks, and Giants of the Ocean by Susan Casey.
Not a sponsor.
Not a sponsor, yes.
So if you're ever hanging out on a beach and you see all the water from the shore suddenly pull back and disappear, start running. And that's actually, there was a little girl in the tsunamis that happened in mid to early 2000s. And she saved a bunch of people on the beach she was on because she knew that fact.
FYI, I'm going to turn off cameras again to hunt for ground faults.
Is the CTD off?
Yeah. Oh, no, it's on. So,
Yeah, then you're not going to find anything.
oh, it was on for the whole dive.
I'm on the alarms page. I'll give you updates.
Roger.
We're at 900. I would do,
That's starboard rail cam, isn't it?
yeah, I think it's in the cameras.
Seems to be in that camera circuit in general.
Six, 7, 8.
Maybe we should try
It updated.
really?
Yeah.
Where is it today? I was able to get it above a meg doing that yesterday on the way up. Is that one it?
Nope.
Where is it?
Try the temp probe. That's been,
Has been known.
Well, it's also been yanked around.
It's a new one that's been barely used. The last one had water and it wasn't ground faulting, so which was very
Nope.
strange. Nope. Not our CTD, I hope.
Well, yeah, but you just turned on theirs, so you're never going to find it.
Oops, accidentally.
17, 18, 19, 20. Oh, whatever you did, it's mad. It's taking a while to update.
Oh no.
2.6.
Really?
So it's either our CTD
Our
or oxygen sensor.
I think our CTD is isolated.
Yeah, I don't know if that's connected.
We have had our O2 sense ground fault before. Pesky connector.
Yep, still 2.6.
So if I turn those cameras back on, where are they? Doink, doink, doink.
Do. 25, 26, it's definitely going to bring some kind of change. 35.
Really? Wow.
38. Yep.
So which is the big culprit there? Is it never had to chase ground fault so frequently on the system.
That's definitely doing something. Yep. So that one's... Butt cam is 1.
Significant.
Yeah.
And
Turn on starboard bio box. I mean, you can leave them both on, but... Because I'm suspect of that one too. Nope, that one's fine. All right. Today.
So O2 sense and aft camera.
Yeah, try bucket. Do, 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 do.
I wonder if the aft cam gets...
Nope, both are good. That's all good.
Yeah.
So, aft cam and O2 sensor. Well, turn on the O2 sensor. Let's just confirm that one.
Roger. I cleaned that one already once on this year. And I would swear that I secured them little socket head cap screws. Oh yeah.
Yep.
So it's about a meg.
So for those of you just joining us, we finished a
Look at that note.
low
O2
dive,
sensor, Herc aft cam.
very quick dive actually, to install the last fetch, and
We've
now we're heading
created a
back up to
monster.
the surface and hopefully heading to Endeavour next. Although that plan could change.
I do want to. We'll see what that ends up at, but I think that there's either air, they introduced air into the system, or we're leaking more. Primary composite 3. Yeah. Yeah, I'm not surprised. We'll just see if it comes back or not. Science, do you want your CTD running on the way up?
Please.
You got it? It'll make you have to lean forward. Well, better turn on Norbit.
So, all stations, Tim is missing his phone. Asked him to describe it, and he says, well, it's kind of rectangular and black. And I thought,
Oh.
oh,
Uh-oh.
yeah, okay, so it's one that will really stand out.
Well, we'll keep an eye out.
As I put mine in my pocket before I leave it somewhere. And yes, I checked it was mine.
Mine stands out only because it's shattered on both sides. I think it's time to treat myself to a new one when I get home.
Yep. I recommend Google Pixels.
Oh, yeah.
Augured into the bottom.
Yeah, but yeah, I like to use it for the way down, but oh, 23 lateraling. Yeah, so now I'm speeding up. Oh. Trevor and I were talking, we're like, just as long as they're not waiting on us, it's okay. On the way down, there was a weird current at about, I don't know, probably just before the watch change. And so we got swung like that. And then all of a sudden, I'm like going this way. So I had to increase my horizontals. And it was odd because we never actually swung back over, right? But like we swung this way, and then we were getting, the vehicles were getting a lot closer.
Yeah, I was wondering if that was going to try and happen on the way up. 'Cause I only have a little bit of forward on there and no auto heading. It pushed you all the way around to the north, right? Guess I can turn this off, eh?
Yep.
Somebody asked earlier what kind of line we use, and then we got busy and it never got addressed.
What kind of rope?
I started thinking about it. It's pretty complicated. Like it depends a lot on the purpose. What are you gonna do with this line? Is it part of a permanent installation or?
Right, temporary. Do you need it to float? Right.
Yeah. Do you need a floater or a sinker? And anything that we're gonna.
Do you want it to biodegrade quickly?
Yeah, like natural fiber, like sisal or hemp, will biodegrade. Imagine if you left a piece of amp steel on the seafloor, it'd still be there 300 years from now.
Yeah, probably.
Never noticed that before.
But
You can see the aft port axial, and
Yep.
you can see Argus light bouncing through it, so you can see the thruster spinning.
yeah, that's the one that I caught a net in one time. I like sidled up next to a rock and thought it was a rock. It was a rock with a net draped over it.
Nice.
And just like watched it kind of get sucked in, and it was like all stop on all the thrusters, and then I was like, okay, let's run it backwards and lateral away, and we got out. And it was just like, wow.
You know how often that happens?
Yeah, I was just like, we're not going back to that rock. It was unexpected and then a pleasant surprise.
So rocks are more worrisome than, say, sharks for their ROV?
Yeah, you're not too concerned about a shark going through your thruster. Sharks have more of a self-preservation instinct than nets do. Nets are more like, I will sacrifice myself to destroy your ROV.
I think we drew a little shark fin on the navigation screen.
So what's the coldest our ROVs can stand? Coldest water?
Below 0.
I had an interesting bit of chat about that. We were operating one of the little ROVs, Japanese, one of the little Japanese spreads.
Oh, yeah.
And we're diving on methane. They call them methane chimneys. I never heard anybody talk about them anywhere other than there. But they've got a sub-bottom profile, and it's like methane. Oh, not methane. What am I thinking of? Gas hydrate.
Yeah.
Deposit that is like a massive, on the scale like 20 meter in diameter.
Yeah, it's just one of those huge hydrates.
And we were exploring that with the vehicle, and the hydraulic fluid got so cold that we started to lose thrust. We couldn't hold the vehicle down. It just started floating up.
Wow.
Huh.
I was working with Russ and Steve.
What were they running in it?
I think it was, well, it was, I'm pretty sure it was Telus like 20.
Oh.
But we looked at the water temperature, and it was below 0. And like you very rarely encounter that in the ocean. It's usually like between two and 4.
Yeah, I've seen some of those big hydrate sheets almost. I mean, it was just like this big mound of stuff, and it wasn't really off-gassing or anything. It was mostly just hanging out. It's like that's the one that they tell the myths about, you know, like the bubbles all come up at once
Right.
to the sea surface, and then there's nothing to hold the ship up.
We noticed years ago, courtesy of the fledgling at the time Neptune Observatory, we had cameras looking at hydrates where there was bubbles coming up, and you set up this camera and there's no bubbles. And it turned out it was coordinated with the tide. So they off gas when there's less pressure, which kind of makes sense.
It's amazing to me how many things get figured out, and then like if you do think back through it, you're like, oh yeah, well that makes sense.
Yeah.
You know, I never would have made the connection on my own, but
we're with the German outfit on the original sauna. It's going back quite a few years then, but they had a clamshell grab that was big enough that it could pick up a minivan.
Dump truck loads.
They used to drop this thing. They got bad-mouthed off the coast eventually because of the wholesale destruction. This thing, they would send it down and pick up like tons of
whatever was, yeah.
gas hydrates was their principal interest at the time. And they bring it up and just drop it on the deck of the ship. And the smell would knock you down, right? When the methane hydrates start to sublimate. They showed us something that was totally fascinating at the time. I got pictures. You can hold a chunk of this stuff in your hand and set it on fire. And you're like it's flaming in your hand. Your hand's freezing. It's curious.
That was wild.
It's weird stuff.
Happy scientists playing in their pile of mud on the deck for days. Took them like 2 days to clean all that stuff off.
In gum boots.
Yeah. I was trying to think of the word the other day. What do you call it when the hydrothermal vent looks like it's on fire? Something phasing.
Yeah.
The first time I heard it, I thought it was a made-up word.
Familiar with what you're talking about, but I can't conjure it up either.
My mind's on breakfast, not gonna lie.
It is getting close to breakfast.
It's getting closer to breakfast. So we have someone asking how many of us like fishing? Any big fishermen on the boat?
Who doesn't like fishing?
I don't like fishing.
Really?
Not particularly. I mean,
I like to fish.
It can go reasonably well. It's only spoiled by the expectation that you might actually catch something.
I don't like fishing because I feel sad for the fish.
I enjoy fishing, but not enough to
go and do it.
Yeah, well, like at times when it was easier or more convenient, I would go fishing, and now it's like, well,
I think there's an app for that now.
Yeah, probably.
There is.
I think it's called a nap.
I'm not a fan of fishing, but I would like to try ice fishing. That could be a different experience.
You can just buy ice at the store.
Yeah. If you want, we can have somebody put a hook in it. Now, at one point, I was living on a ship as a marine tech for the boat. So if the boat went anywhere, I went there, and we could. Since I was living on the boat, even when we were in dock, I would just go fishing right off the boat, and that captain liked to be fishing. So if we were transiting, we had a line in the water. And somebody was monitoring it, and, you know, you'd get fish on, and he'd stop the ship, and we'd catch some fish. And then did a bunch of work in the Bahamas, and you could always go fishing off the ship from there.
The French research vessel Atalanta is like that. They go everywhere at 7 knots because they drag 2 trolling lines. It's mandatory if you're working on deck and you hear the bells ring.
Click, yeah.
To call the bridge so they can slow down so you can reel in whatever's on there for dinner.
I knew a guy who did paracord and a bungee, and the ship didn't stop.
Huh.
And the idea was that the bungee had to be strong enough that, and that was the signal that there was a fish on the end, was if there was enough resistance to stretch out the bungee. And then he would get like himself and another deckhand, and they would just give it a real strong pop. The goal was to get the fish skipping on the surface and just, you know, pull it in that way.
Wow.
That was more, I think, about eating than it really was about fishing, because there's no real fight to the
No
whole
sport.
thing. Yeah.
Dan and I both work quite a bit in Japan, and the guys on the Japanese boats are just crazy about fishing. They always got a line in the water, and whatever they caught usually end up eating for breakfast and lunch and dinner.
Yeah, yeah, God, we had a sailfish tail wrap itself one time, and like despite revival efforts, it didn't work, and so we had sailfish for a lot of meals. Steaks, stews, omelets.
Soup.
And we were in the Pacific in some of the islands, and we, I think we got a marlin, and we gave that to the islanders, and they were super stoked about it. But they had also caught like 4 50-pound tunas same day, and we had more pokey than we could stomach. It was a weird trip. We had a guy who was working as a deckhand who usually worked as a chef on another boat, and he was actually a better chef than the chef that we had, which was so he would occasionally, you know, like do a guest star meal, and everyone showed up for that one. The joke was the other guy could burn the lettuce on your salad.
What kind of stuff would the good chef cook?
I mean, he was the one who made the pokey. That was really good. He did a buffalo chicken blue cheese omelets one morning.
That sounds amazing.
That was really good. He just got more, I think he was, you know, more creative with the flavors. The other guy made great pizza, but you had to cut out like the middle section because it was raw dough. Like the rest of it was good. But
There's a fine line on those pizzas where it's cooked well and
yep, yeah, there is.
too much versus not enough. So we have a question asking about glowing bubbles from the vents. Apparently there was a research article that came out a couple of years ago about finding glow-in-the-dark bubbles coming out of the vents. Any chance we'll get to see something like that?
I don't know about glow-in-the-dark bubbles. I've seen a lot of things coming out of vents, but I've never seen it glow in the dark.
Yeah, meaning
It does, it
sounds really
can
cool though.
look like it's on fire though, and we did definitely get Argus lighting behind one of the vents and turn off all of Herc's lights, and that made the vents look like they were glowing as they were venting, which was pretty neat.
What is that word now? It's going to drive me crazy. Inverse phasing? No.
I don't
Phase
know.
separation. That's it.
Phase
Yeah.
separation?
Yeah. They call it phase. At least one scientist did. I thought that was really cool.
Say we could ask the scientists in the back row.
We have phase
Usually,
separation.
Usually the vents are too deep to support anything like a bubble.
Yeah.
Because the bubble will collapse due to pressure. So you see stuff that looks like bubbles, but it's not bubbles. It'll like spheres of liquid gases and foolishness like that. It's pretty exotic environment.
Did a collection of methane hydrate bubbles, like just basically a tube over top, collected to this level, and then went up through the water column until, to see how much you actually had collected, how much they expanded. They expanded quite a bit.
Yeah, you don't get much at the top.
Europos has some really bizarre highlight footage of crabs positioning themselves over a stream of methane bubbles, and it's accreting as a gas hydrate on the crab.
Huh.
And it continues to accrete until the crab starts to float up.
Yeah.
They float up in the air, and then they fall over, and they come tumble down the ground, and then they do it again. And you're just thinking, what the hell, are they playing
Yeah,
with this?
there's
Or
not much else to do.
it's bizarre.
We like skydiving, they like bubble jumping or something?
Bubble jumping.
There's always that one crab that just has to be a little bit different.
I've seen that footage. They're trying to determine if he was, like, that was happening accidentally, or if the crabs were
Yeah, intentionally.
intentionally doing that. And if so, why?
Yeah, what's the hook? You're
What
always
is the
looking
hook?
for, is there adaptive value in this behavior?
I think that's it. I think it's this bubble jumping. Crabs like to have fun too.
I guess there's, don't diss it until you try it, right?
Mm.
Yeah.
Bubble jumping crabs. So you tested the adductor?
Yeah. It's fairly impressive. They could just, you know how ours, you stuff it and it would clog it?
Yeah.
Or when we were doing the glass beads, if you stuffed it, it would stop. Holly was just giving her and just burying
Yeah.
her. And
It seemed pretty loose stuff.
yeah, that it was.
Actually seemed to work better if it was stuffed. Like it needed to be sealed.
They needed to have something to create a pressure head against.
Yeah, there was a fine line with the glass beads using the our inductor last year, where it wanted a little bit of head on there, but not too much, because I think then they would get clogged in the long hose. But yeah, I thought it worked great for what it is.
Sounds good.
Couple pieces of pipe with a jet going through it, but I think we're done with that thing. It could probably come off, eh?
Oh, really?
I believe so.
Well,
I think any of the caissons we're going to do, we're here in Cascadia, or back in Barkley, wherever. We should probably get some confirmation of that before we rip it off. But
it's not harming anybody on there. I don't think it's accounted for in the ballast sheet, but it's a separate story.
Yeah.
Have we ever tried to capture bioluminescence? Like,
Yes. You have to have the right cameras for it.
okay.
There's a, I guess, scientist at this point, Brennan Phillips, who's done a bunch of stuff with low light cameras, specifically looking for bioluminescence. And he's done everything from kind of like triggering. So it would set off a series of strobes and then wait for a response. With a low light camera, we'd have to have all the vehicle lights off. And then we've mounted a low light camera on the front of the vehicle and used that for piloting, which is a little weird because your driving perspective is now out your front headlight instead of, out your front windshield. But that was neat. We got some neat luminescence. It seemed to be a lot of things would bioluminesce as they were like kind of rushing out of frame. But
it was more of a response to the disturbance of the ROV than...
Yeah, kind of. Like it was a defense mechanism in a sense. It was like, hey, look over here. We did get some really good footage with that. Not so much of the bioluminescing, but the vampire squid footage is mostly out of that camera, and so is the Deep Staria enigmatica, which is the thing that looks like a big, like clear trash bag. It's on the cover of one of the annual publications and part of the usual highlight reel. We were pretty confident it was a trash bag until we got closer to it.
I always love showing those highlight clips to my students so that they can see the scientists in action going, what is that?
Yeah. Yeah, we were doing a blue water transect, and it was just like, oh, I'm going to avoid that. That's a trash bag. Got like just a little bit closer. I was like, oh, that's it. It's not what I thought it was.
Is that the one where the lasers hits him on the highlights? Yeah, that's pretty cool footage.
Yeah, some of that footage is shot through the main HD, and some of it's shot through the low light camera. And I found it was easier to fly with the main HD knowing where the low light camera was to position the low light camera than it was for me to fly from the low light camera.
All right.
I'd imagine it's a good idea to keep an eye on where the trash bags are because they probably like the Hercules about as much as the nets do.
Yeah, they have a vengeance against thrusters for some reason. That and fishing line if we want to go really go back. I think we went under a long line one time. Argus went over the long line. It was there were siphonophores everywhere, so we didn't actually realize what had happened because everything looked like it was fishing line.
Yeah.
And then it turned out that like no, we actually did go under a long line. We bound up 3 or 4 of the thrusters just completely, and did a dead vehicle recovery. Argus was like on deck, and you could see Hercules was like straight down.
Still tied up.
Still tied
tangled.
up. Yeah, nice. Yeah. We pulled it all up to the surface, and then pulled in, like as much as we could, and cut it, and spent the next day rebuilding all the thrusters. It was amazing. The poly had melted, and we had these perfect rings.
Yeah, underneath the thrusting. Yeah.
We held up a lot of fishing gear on this spread last year when I was on.
Yeah, we did. So much so Bob was saying, that's it, we're not diving here again.
Where were you diving?
Around the Catalina.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that can happen. I worry about getting shallow and you get that bull kelp.
Yeah.
That
stuff is tough.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was great diving around Catalina. Lots to see, but there sure is a lot of line.
Most bizarre diving shallow experience I had was out with Ambari on Ventana, and I was doing, I guess, pilot shot part of basically a job interview, and TC Craig Daw was coaching me, and we're actually approaching the beach with the ROV, and there was these big rock outcrops, basalt. The PI on that trip wanted to look at some little thing that was growing on them.
Oh.
And we kept getting farther and farther inshore until got to the point where the surge vehicle was picking up and slamming into the bottom. And the main cameras I'm looking at like breaking waves from the bottom side. Yeah. And I was having kittens and Craig was totally enjoying it, right? And the PI is saying, there's a rock just a little farther in over there. And I'm saying, I'm not sure we can. Craig is saying, go ahead, go on, go ahead, come on, you can do that. Just totally freaked out.
I think the shallowest we've been, oh, we've done dives with Herc, you know, like along a cliff face, tail to tail, basically. Herc's pretty much on the surface, but we followed a seamount. There's a seamount north of here that we were doing some stuff for DFO prior to ONC. And it gets up to, like, I don't know, like 2 to 3 meters below the surface. Real navigation hazard if you're unaware of it.
Yeah.
And they wanted to, when we had time and they were wondering if we could go all the way up to the top. And I was like, yeah, just run it as if we were doing a recovery. Mike Hannaford was flying and down there, and like he's got all the lights off because there's so much light filtering down at that point, but he was in the washing machine of the waves. And,
yeah, search.
Yeah.
Yeah, that can really freak you out if you're close to a structure. I remember
no control whatsoever.
Doing that on Folger Pinnacle with the Ropos vehicle, and there's like a school of fish around, and the vehicle and the fish all get sucked up the side of this giant rock, and then got sucked back down again. There's nothing you can do about it. Right?
Well, the first time we tried to go in there and it wasn't slack tide, that was pretty scary. We abandoned the vehicles rushing in and out between rock walls.
Who wants breakfast first? Well, Dan's not responding. I'm going for breakfast first.
What?
Is that what you get for keeping your camera on mute?
I just realized K2 is on shift in about 20 minutes after having been unceremoniously dragged out of bed about an hour ago.
You can go eat if you want, Kim. I think we're all right for the next 1,000 meters.
I usually have breakfast after the handoff.
Oh, after the handoff, roger.
So we have a question that we can kind of go around the room for. What is the most upsetting thing that you guys have seen on a dive?
Ground faults.
Seeing garbage is always a bit upsetting.
Yeah, I was gonna say
You know,
garbage
Yeah.
too.
I'd
it's
agree with that.
disappointing, isn't it? You see garbage.
I think that's the only time I've really been upset at seeing something on a dive.
Yeah, I third that garbage for sure.
Occasionally something otherwise informally beautiful goes through the basomatic, and that's sad.
Yeah, anytime we accidentally bring something to the surface, it always makes me sad. Like that octopus.
Or something accidentally goes through the vertical thrusters.
Did that octopus come all the way up?
Yeah.
Came all the way up and probably didn't make it all the way down.
But it might have.
It might have.
We brought them up before and they've seemed to be okay.
I've seen some pretty big ones come up off the platforms in the Strait of Georgia.
Yeah.
And the biggest one I saw, like, came out of the water on the crane deck and jumped off right before getting on the boat. Just like going for a ride. Okay.
They're smart enough to know they're getting lifted out of the water and
Yeah.
they can escape, right?
Yeah.
Was the one on the sediment trap, did it have a brood? Was it protecting eggs, was it? Or it's really strange that it didn't run away when we picked it up.
Yeah, not sure.
I think it felt like it had plenty of places to hide, so it was kind of okay, but didn't think everything through all the way.
We do the octopus garden there down in off the coast of San Francisco. There's a seamount where all the octopus are they're in the warm water there, and they're all protecting their brood and their laying eggs. And they're kind of upside down in this real weird position. It's on our highlights reel. But we had a few of those. So we were poking around in there, putting oxygen sensors in there, long-term oxygen sensors. So scientists would put them in there, and they would monitor the water temperature for the whole year, and then they come back the following year and pick them up. And a couple of the octopus would inadvertently stick themselves to the manipulator, and it was really strange because typically they're really skittish and they would let go, but they went right around with us for hours. Finally it let go, but it was pretty upsetting to you're basically poking around in a nest and the thing is clinging to your arm, you can't get it off.
Yeah, in the nature of upsetting things of a more pedantic nature, like ground faults, or watching a stream of spheres of what is obviously hydraulic oil going by.
Things you can't control because you're 2.5 kilometers away.
And you know the vehicle is about to die.
Yeah, and it's going to be a whole lot of work when and if you get it back on the deck. The most scary thing for me is those siphonophores. They always think they're a rope.
Yeah.
They always cause me to come to the edge of my seat and heart rate to increase. And just like Greg was saying, just when you start to get used to them, a real rope appears and you play right into it. Okay, you can't relax your guard in that aspect. So.
Has anyone ever been stung
by a siphonophore or jellyfish that came up on Hercules?
Yes, many times.
Ah.
It's not, you don't really get stung. They kind of, you go through the tentacles or whatever, and they'll actually, they can dry out on the vehicle and still get you for days. They, mostly for me personally, they kind of on the inside of your forearms where the skin is maybe a bit more tender there. You rub it there when you're working on the vehicle, and it will, it's almost like getting a burn or a rope burn or a scratch, looks like.
So it's not a good idea to lean against the Herc.
Well, yeah, we can avoid it, but we, usually every time it comes on deck, it gets a freshwater washdown. And that's part of the reason you can see some of the creatures going by now as we're coming up, like the jellyfish. Some of those have stinging tentacles, so we also get it from handling the tether. So we have to pull the tether in. We have obviously high voltage gloves when we're bringing it aboard or putting it in the water, but when we're moving it around on deck, we're sometimes not wearing gloves. And we can, yeah, some of that stuff is some people are more susceptible to it than others. Some people barely touch it and they break out in a big rash. And some people it doesn't affect them at all. What always amazes me is the scientists with no fear whatsoever sticking their hand in the, we have a couple bio boxes on Hercules that are, I don't know, foot by a foot or so, each of the containers. So there's, depending on how we divide them up, I guess there could be, half a dozen in the front or on the side. And there's all kinds of stingy, sharp, pokey things in there, and the scientists
just dive right in.
Dive right in. No gloves. The water is literally freezing, and I guess you can't feel it being bit or stung. Like, no way I'm putting my hand in there.
In the name of science.
In the name of science.
And the excitement of science. Like, oh my God, what's going to happen? Wait a second, this hurts.
They usually put gloves on when they're doing the glass sponges. They can really, picking up a piece of fiberglass or a sticker. We're going to have to stream at some point. I think it's spinning us around to the north again. It's that strange current.
Yeah, it's a little earlier than when you normally set up to do that, but
yeah, we usually don't stream till 300. This rate will be under the boat up there. I think we'll wait though.
That's a neat jellyfish on Argus.